Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I'm Peter Gross, co-host of the original Wild Kingdom with Marlin Perkins and Jim Fowler. When Wild Kingdom debuted in the early 1960s, handling and training animals to perform were common in many zoos. But today, animals like this capuchin monkey serve as wildlife ambassadors for their species in order to educate rather than just to entertain. These ambassadors have been hurt in the wild and would not survive without human interaction. Trained professionals bottle feed them and foster the animals back to health, and the animals become imprinted on their human caregivers. Wild Kingdom showed generations of people the majesty of our animal ambassadors and helped us to care about them. When you care about something, you become committed to saving it, and that's how we all succeed in the Wild Kingdom. So we're going to sit back, relax, and enjoy Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
In the high Himalayas, where the Wild Kingdom never ends, natives say the abominable snowman still wanders the lonely slopes. To explore and explode myths and superstitions in the Wild Kingdom, here is Marlon Perkins from Chicago's Lincoln Park Zoo.
Hello. Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. For centuries, Africans and Asians have believed that the rhinoceros horn is a powerful antidote against poisons. Many of them still believe that legend, as many North Americans believe in legends about owls. They believe, for example, that the call or the hoot of an owl is an ill omen. And they also believe that because owls face you and watch you and will turn their head when you move around them, that if you go clear around them, you can cause them to wring their own neck. Here's an American great horned owl. Let's see. They turn their head because they can't turn their eyes. Now, watch closely. That's the action that most people have missed. The fact that they will turn their head back again very quickly. Yet many people still believe the legend. Just as the caveman who drew the original drawing on his cave of these mammoths believed in legends too. He believed that to draw a picture of an animal gave him some power over that animal. And between his time and our time, many legends and superstitions have appeared and disappeared. But there are still today many legends in our language and in our beliefs, like the one of Mr. Mouse. Jim has an experiment all set up for Mr. Mouse. Elephants have... That's talking, Mogo.
You know you.
Yeah, elephants have inspired many legends. One of them is that they're very much afraid of mice, afraid they'll run up inside their trunk. You think Mogo's going to be afraid of our little mouse here?
Well, I don't know, but you know, Mogo weighs about 200,000 times what the mouse does. So I don't know. I think it's sort of wishful thinking.
Let's see.
Oh, Mogo. You may not like an unfamiliar object around, huh? Mogo doesn't panic anyway.
Put it on top of his head. See what happens.
Tickle a little bit, Mogo, huh?
He doesn't seem to be too afraid, does he?
Not so much.
Maybe tickles a little.
About all.
Yeah, well, that brings up the question of how do these old legends get started? Maybe somebody saw an elephant actually frightened by a mouse one time and decided that all elephants were afraid of them. But more likely, I think, they may have seen an elephant startled suddenly by something and thought that, the mouse nearby had been responsible, when actually it could have been a fluttering newspaper that they didn't even see. But I know for a fact that elephants are not afraid of mice because they have mice in their stalls right here in the zoo. And many times I've seen an elephant with a blast of air blow a mouse clear out of his stall.
You about blew this one off just then.
Yeah.
Well, you know, this trunk is very handy. I know there's some confusion on how an elephant drinks. Some people think that an elephant drinks through its trunk.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it's actually the trunk is used to help drink. And he sucks water up into the trunk and then simply squirts it into his throat. I think we can demonstrate this. Oh, Mogo. Here you go. Don't drink so sloppy. Oh, boy. So
He's not so thirsty. That gives you a pretty good idea of how they drink, all right, doesn't it?
That trunk's handy for a lot of things.
They fill up their trunk and then they squirt it
Here,
either in their mouth or all over themselves, and us too. Well, Jim, I think it's time to take old Mogull and his little friend the mouse back into the other part of the zoo. The keepers will help you over there, and then join me over there at the Vulture, will you?
Okay, come on, Mogo.
Bye, Mogull.
Here we go. Out the door.
The belief that vultures can smell death is about as strong today as it ever was. Moving pictures are still using the hovering vulture to let their audience know that death is approaching. But this raises some pretty interesting questions. Do vultures really smell death coming? Do vultures smell anything at all? Do vultures locate their prey by sight or by odor? Well, let's experiment.
Well, to do this experiment, I have a king vulture from South America, and I've been working with him so he feels at ease in this lab. I have 2 pans of meat. One of the pans, as you can tell, is quite rancid. This has been sitting out for about 5 days in the sun. And I have it covered with gauze so that our vulture over there can smell it, obviously, through the gauze, but he can't see it. Now, this pan is full of meat. It's very fresh meat, very little odor, and it's not going to be covered. So first of all, to show you that this guy is really very hungry. Look how hungry he is. Here, you can have it all. Now, the first experiment is to try the pan with the gauze on it. Let's see if there's any reaction at all. Boy, if she can smell that like I can, there should be a reaction.
I don't understand why she can't smell it.
Okay, that's negative. You hold that. Now let's see the reaction when I put down some meat that's fresh, but no odor to it, but she can see it. Well, that's a pretty fast reaction.
Very fast.
I think in this case, Marlon, it looks like this bird used sight and not smell to find this meat.
Yeah, Jim, but what's that going to do for all those wonderful Hollywood movies that show the hero staggering across the hot sands with the vultures hovering overhead?
Well, I think we underestimate the sight that a vulture has. From 5,000 feet, when this bird's flying over its territory, it can sight animals that look a little bit peculiar in their behavior. For example, an animal that's sick or wounded, one that's falling behind a little bit in the pack or the group. And these are smart enough to predict by the actions of an animal, by what they see, when the animal's going to die, so they simply wait for it.
Well, the legend is almost true then. They see death approaching rather than smell it. Of all the myths and legends about animals, the most common type is their ability to predict the future, especially about the weather. Some believe that furred animals will grow exceptionally heavy pelts in anticipation of a severe winter. Another belief is that squirrels put away an extra supply of nuts if the approaching winter is going to be long. And of course, the most famous of all the weather prophets is Old Man Groundhog. Each February 2nd, he's supposed to come out of his burrow and observe the weather. If he sees his shadow, he decides that spring is still 6 weeks away, and so he crawls back down in the hole to go to sleep again. What about all these superstitions? Well, I've checked the Weather Bureau records year after year, and I find that there's absolutely no scientific connection between any of these animal activities and the actual state of the weather. This is a rare albino groundhog. Neither he nor any other animal can predict what the weather's going to be. They can't make any better predictions about the future than you or I can. Nearly everyone believes you can charm a snake with music. Things going all right, Jim?
Yeah, I've got the cobra in the basket. I'll go on out and get the lab set up.
Nervous bird, isn't it?
Not used to sitting on the fist very much. Come on up now. Attaboy. Come on. Whoa. Oh, well, we'll have to train you a little bit next week. There we go. The cobra's all yours, Marlon.
Okay, Jim. Well, seeing is believing, I suppose. Almost any tourist in India could see a similar thing in front of almost any hotel. But I knew there was a lot more to the story. So when I was in India recently to join Sir Edmund Hillary's expedition to the Himalayas, hearing of a snake charmer's school, I decided to film the whole story. The snake charmer's school is in the tiny village of Molar Bund, just off the main road between New Delhi and the Taj Mahal. Snake charming is the only means of livelihood for the men of Molar Bund, and youngsters learn about handling snakes like our youngsters learn to play with cats and dogs. Along the river's edge, mynah birds have dug deep holes in the hard clay banks for their nests. When they abandon these holes, cobras often move in. Back in the village at the elder's home, another lesson begins. The flute is made from a calabash gourd. The bamboo reeds with the holes are fastened to the gourd with tar. Indian coins are used simply as decorations. From long hours of practice, the boy has learned to inhale through his nostrils, use his cheeks as a reservoir of air, then exhale air from his mouth to produce a continuous tone. The flute must be held at just the right angle, and no other. It must be moved from side to side in exact rhythm. The boy imitates carefully, and when the elder is satisfied, the flute is passed on to the other pupil. Besides the flute, the student snake charmer must learn to use the drum. The rhythm, the melody, and the movements must all be mastered before the cobra itself is removed from the basket. The elder shakes his hand to attract the cobra's attention. This is a game only the experienced can play. A snake charmer isn't allowed many mistakes. Finally, the flute is passed to the young man. The elder warns him again and again to keep his eyes on the head of the snake. For centuries, from father to son to grandson, the men of Molar Bund have passed on the secrets of snake charming. And from this tiny village, they move out in all directions to perform an art perhaps as ancient as India herself. I'm not going to play the music this time, and I think you'll see the identical reactions of the cobra, because actually cobras are deaf, like all snakes. They have no external ears, but they have pretty good local vision, close-by vision. And so as I move this extended object on the end of the flute, if I move that near him, he responds, because it's the closest object to him. And so by moving it back and forth like this, you get the so-called famous cobra dance. Actually, the music from a flute like this is to charm the audience, not the snake. As a matter of fact, the belief that music charms snakes is a myth that's perpetuated by men like those from the village of Molar Bund who make their living on the strength of that belief. There are more myths and superstitions about snakes than any other animal. The very word snake has become synonymous, rightly or wrongly, with the word treachery, just as the word gorilla has become synonymous with a ferocious, savage brute of circus handbills and Hollywood movies. Gorillas aren't as surly and mean as their reputation. I have a little experiment I'd like to show you. Bring in Ferocious Freddy.
Ferocious Freddy's a little timid of me now, so I got his good buddy Sam to help bring him in.
Okay, Sam, put Freddy right up on the table here. Gorillas are very timid animals. They're afraid of snakes and any new object. They're even afraid of squeaky toys like this one.
Oops. Oh, Freddy.
Oh, okay, Freddy, here. Okay, here, I take it all back. Here, now, you want to come over here and have some food? All right. Freddy's going to be just as afraid of a squeaky toy when he gets full grown. But you know, the full-grown gorilla in the wild state is the protector of his family. And he, living in the forest when danger threatens, he places himself between danger and his family and stands on his hind legs, clapping his chest, screaming, making a great show of strength while his family filters off into the forest. I'd like now to examine the legend of the abominable snowman. That creature who lives high in the Himalayan mountains and is called Yeti by the natives there, the Sherpas. They say he's a huge animal, man-like, standing on 2 feet, as much as 7 or 8 feet tall, with long arms that hang down to his knees, reddish, black, or brownish hair. He's ferocious, eats yaks, and sometimes people, or carries them off. But he walks like a man out through the snow, leaving telltale marks behind him. The very best photograph of Yeti foot tracks or abominable snowman foot tracks was taken by Eric Shipton, the British explorer, in 1951. This picture was so clear and fine that it aroused the interest of zoologists everywhere. I know it did mine, because I immediately compared the outlines of the foot tracks of anthropoid apes with this photograph. I'd like to show you how we did that. Ready? Susie? Hi, Jim. You want to take that over there? Now you come right back here and get out of the way. You can have some grapes. Sam, do you think we could get Terrible Freddy to put his foot on here so that I can make a tracing of the outline of his foot? Put it down flat, Freddy. And right in the middle here now. Hold it still. This won't hurt. Very painless operation. Just take a grease pencil and go around the toes, around like this, clear back to the heel. Hold it, Freddy. I'm not quite finished. Well, I'll have to come right down like that. Anyhow, here is the kind of a foot track we're talking about, a tracing. And we have them already traced out there on a clear plastic sheet. Jim, do you want to compare that photograph with the one of the gorilla there? Come here, Susie. Come here, Susie.
This is the gorilla.
Yeah, the lower one. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not very close at all.
Doesn't match up, does it? Try it with the chimpanzee now. Both of these anthropoids are from Africa, a long way from the Himalayan mountains.
That's not very close either.
No, I guess it's not a chimpanzee
Susie,
either.
that isn't you.
No, Susie, I guess it wasn't you after all, or any of your relatives. So the World Book Encyclopedia sent an expedition high into the Himalayan mountains of northern Nepal, into the area of the haunts of the snowman. And one of the objectives of the expedition was to bring back proof that either the Yeti did or it did not exist. If we couldn't find a snowman, or if we couldn't even bring back a picture of one, what bits of evidence could we bring back that would prove the existence of these miraculous creatures? Well, there were the reports of the natives, but they're hard to verify. And then there were the foot tracks. That was a pretty good bet. We might come across those. And then there were the 2 scalps that they had in the villages near the Mount Everest region. We wanted to see those and find out what they were. We continued to look for the foot tracks in the snow, and finally we found them within 3 miles of where Eric Shipton had found his. Our Sherpas all said that these were certainly Yeti tracks, the best Yeti tracks they'd ever seen. We followed this line of tracks for over a mile and had the opportunity to examine them under the varying conditions of the changing slopes. It then became clear to us that a fox had walked off of a sloping rock slide onto the snow and had made all of these tracks. No other animal had broken the snow in this area. Where the sun didn't shine on these tracks directly, They were obviously and clearly the small tracks, pug marks of a fox. But on the sunny slopes, they gradually changed into Yeti tracks, and no two of them were alike. This track looked like the impression of a mitten. That same track is now compared with the foot track of a large boot. This track was just a kind of a blob in the snow without any very direct shape at all. Here was one that had the indications of a heel, an instep, and some toes. Here then was a dramatic suggestion that the sun in some way changed fox tracks into Yeti tracks. But how? There's a possible explanation in a principle known as ablation, during which moisture actually evaporates directly from the snow before water forms. To show how 4 fox tracks can form into one abominable snowman track, here is a series of pictures. A fox walks over the slopes, leaving his footprints behind. Those tracks that are left in shadow remain fox tracks, but those that are exposed to the sun are changed. Let's look at one set of 4 foot tracks. This is how they would look immediately after a fox had made them. Under the heat of the sun, the snow between the individual toe marks of a single print gradually evaporates until each footprint becomes an irregular impression in the snow. Ablation continues until all 4 of these footprints join into a single depression. Where the sun strikes most directly, toe-like extensions develop until finally a shape like this is formed, a shape the natives call a Yeti track. I'm sure Yeti tracks can be made by foxes, wolves, and other animals. But what about those famous Yeti scalps? We saw both of them in Kumjung and Pangboche. And after critical examination and after photographing them, we felt that they were man-made. And if man could make them, maybe we could. We finally found the skin of a serow related to our pronghorn antelopes. And after making a mold of wood, the same dimensions as the Kumjung scalp, we stretched the skin over and came up with our version, a copy of the famous scalp. But we felt that we needed verification. So we finally prevailed on the people of Kumjung to allow us to bring the scalp out. We showed it to the scientists in Chicago, Paris, and London, and after critical examination, they all said the same thing. They said that the Kumjung scalp was made from the skin of the Himalayan serow, probably much as we had made ours. You know, this scalp is believed by the Sherpas to be the protector of their village. If it leaves the village, bad luck may befall them. The Sherpas have their snowman, just as every other continent has its legends of strange animals living just beyond the reach of man, somewhere deep in the wildest part of the wild kingdom. Are all of these legends merely legends? I don't think so. It's true we didn't find a snowman and don't believe there is one. But the Sherpas will continue to believe in the Yeti because legends are passed on from generation to generation. So there will always be legends and superstitions to examine, and man will continue looking for them deeper and deeper in the wild kingdom.